Are you ready?
Is that the best that you got? We about to go live, are you ready to rock? So take a shot, boy. Is that the best that you got? From the fans to the fans, let me hear the crowd pop. So take a shot, boy. Is that the best that you got? We about to go live, are you ready to rock? So take a shot, boy. Is that the best that you got? From the fans to the fans, let me hear the crowd pop. So take a shot. Oh yeah, so take a shot. Oh, so take a shot. Oh, so take a shot.
It's a consumer-driven industry. You have to understand your audience, what attracts them, and what will allow growth. Marketing is everything. It's all around us. It's what you see. It's what you hear. It's the single most important thing a company can invest in. And you must invest wisely. There's thousands of wrestlers out there, but only one is truly marketable.
Welcome everyone, it's me, your favorite actor, the Hollywood assassin Mark Schwann, with a very special interview. He's not only the Consumers Champion, but he is the MLW Caribbean Champion as well. He is the AirPod God. I'm talking about the most marketable, Richard Holliday. Richard, how you doing, man?
Well, I was doing well as you would assume that I'm doing, which is fantastic. You know, there is nothing that can possibly stop my attitude from changing the way that I live my life. There is no virus, there is no pandemic that can possibly stop myself from breathing rarefied air on a daily basis.
Oh, I believe it, man. Listen, I know a lot of people taking this time right now to self-reflect or maybe even try to find ways to evolve. Is there anything you're doing as well? Can we expect some different things when things come back to normal here?
Well, I am currently working on a project, which is in the preliminary stages at the moment, which I think would be rather fun for the consumers and would be something a little bit different, a little bit unorthodox from what they're used to from me. And, you know, it's, again, in the preliminary stages, but if it does come to fruition, it could be something quite riveting. Until then, I am just focusing on myself, focusing on, you know, bettering myself in these tragic times and keeping a positive mind state. And, again, there are things that I'm working on, but I'm going to keep it hush at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a shower, not a teller, right?
For sure. You know, you got to put things out there into the universe. Sometimes you need to speak them into the universe in order to make them happen.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to early on in your life, a little bit earlier in your career. Yeah, I know you always wanted to be a professional wrestler. And I know football, you had no desire to go that route professionally. Do you remember what the exact moment it was where you're just like, all right, I need to do this now?
Surprisingly, I do. I believe it was sophomore year of college. I had just finished the season. I believe the season had just ended for my sophomore year, and we're going on winter break. And I had gone home from college, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I had just said, well, you know what? I'm going to go back for my spring semester at this institution, but I am no longer going to play football. I think I'm going to leave that in the past. And after the spring semester, I'm gonna go ahead and get the transfer papers ready and leave schools, go to a different university, finish my degree in marketing. And I'm gonna become a professional wrestler. So I think it was right around that time. I might have been 22 years old. The passion and desire to be a professional wrestler was always there. It was just putting the wheels into motion. And I think myself looking myself in the mirror and starting to rationalize, you know, the difference between wrestling and football, the decision became clear. And here on out, it was all about pro wrestling.
And it sounds like you made a very wise decision. You know, I obviously know you have a very close relationship to your father and with your parents. How did they feel about that decision? Were they supportive right off the bat?
Well, of course. I mean, my lawyer / my father was always, you know, very supportive of me being a professional wrestler because he knew that that's where I would flourish and eventually make a ton of money. So it's the long game with that. It's being persistent and understanding the future, looking at long-term gain, not just short-term gain, and not even in comparison to football, just the opportunity that pro wrestling presents in its own. And that was always attractive to us, and that was always kind of the mindset in terms of that and anything that we do.
No, that's fantastic that you had that, which is a great foundation to have there.
Oh, for sure.
Now, some football athletes, or even athletes from different sports, when they transition to wrestling, they often have a hard time with it. What did you find your toughest transition was from football to wrestling?
I didn't find very much of a tough transition at all. In fact, I found it quite easy, and I believe that football had helped me in that transition because so much professional wrestling, to somebody who wouldn't really understand is footwork and positioning yourself in the ring.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people are very sloppy when they get into a wrestling ring, whether it be running the ropes or, just putting themselves in certain positions. And that was never an issue for me, especially with the position that I played. I was actually an offensive lineman. You wouldn't really know that looking at me now, but that's what I played. And that position is really its grassroots. The foundation of being an offensive lineman is footwork and positioning. So that easily helped me translate. And it was, just the fact that I had, overwhelming charisma, great articulation skills, good looks, height, strength, power, whatever the case may be in terms of being successful at pro wrestling. That's why it was such an easy transition for me. It was just a good blend.
Now, why is it, do you think that some athletes don't necessarily make that transition so well? Do you think it's a charisma factor?
Well, without a doubt, I think charisma is the most important thing in pro wrestling. If you don't have it, you won't succeed. Well, you won't reach a certain level of success. Maybe that's a better way to put it. For myself, it was easy. But yeah, there's plenty of athletes out there who they just don't have it. A lot of people say, you got to have it. And that's such a tough thing to peg what it is. I think it is different for everybody. But a lot of people just don't have anything. They just don't have the charisma or the star power or the presence that it takes to be a pro wrestler. Although they might be a phenomenal athlete, that'll only get you so far.
Right, and we've seen that time and time again. People with natural athletic abilities, they just fizzle out because they don't necessarily have that je ne sais quoi.
Oh, for sure. They just don't have the connection that it takes.
Yeah, it's all about connecting. I've seen your interviews and I see you on TV. It doesn't seem like there's much of a difference from what we see in TV in real life. Is there at all, or no? Am I reading that wrong?
No, what you see is primarily what you get. There's the old, adage in wrestling is, you need to just be you turned up to 10 or turned up to 12. And that's really not even the case for myself. That's just who I am. Whether it be the way that I dress or the AirPods or the coffee that I drink, the way I like to live my life, the way I like to go out, the women I associate myself with, the way I talk, the way I walk. That's me. It's 100% me. I wouldn't say that it's really turned up much at all. Sometimes I'm a bit more energetic. Sometimes I'm a bit more relaxed. In this present moment, I'm a bit more relaxed. If I were in front of 5,000 consumers, well, I might be a little bit more energetic. So it's all placement. It's all, relative to the scenery. But really for all of it, it's just me.
Now, was that always the case, or was that just over time as you develop your skills in the wrestling? Because I remember you mentioned in another podcast that you felt like you may have had a bad reputation early on. Do you think that had something to do with it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, because typically when you enter pro wrestling, there's a very big respect factor associated with it. And, I came in and I'm just 100% me. So 100% me, maybe with no backing behind his name, might really rub some people the wrong way and might make people look at you a little bit differently. And do I blame them? No, of course not. I came in very brash and very full, of myself and my abilities because I knew, the cream always rises. It's eventually going to rise. And it has risen without sounding too sacrilegious there. It has. And I have. And now people just kind of accept my personality for what it is. That's just rich, which is fine. I mean, back then, if I rubbed somebody the wrong way, so be it.
So I take it you were never young boyed at all.
Not really. I mean, what were they possibly going to do to me? And that's not really, coming from a self-centered perspective, but I wasn't going to take it even if they were going to try to. these are different times. It's, I started training in 2015. It's not like I started training in, 1985. I would imagine things might have been a bit different back then in terms of the way that people broke in. But I guess, thankfully, quote unquote, breaking in when I did might have worked in my favor a bit more.
No, absolutely. Huge difference between those different time frames, what you mentioned. Richard, I know you're a master at marketing, and I kind of wish more wrestlers took that on. I feel like there's a lacking there in their marketing skills. What are some things that you see that marketing fails in the professional wrestling community?
Well, I think a lot of people fail to market themselves properly on, several different levels. I mean, there's so many different ways to market yourself. I mean, there's immediate marketing. What I mean by that is when you walk through the curtain, you are immediately marketing yourself in terms of the way that you present yourself. Presentation is marketing, and it should be looked at it that way. If you present yourself as a star off the rip, then people are going to believe you're a star, and then once they believe you're a star, then they're going to know you're a star. It's, perception is very much reality, especially in pro wrestling. So immediately recognizing what a star should and should not do, whether it be gear, whether it be moveset, whether it be entrance music, whether it be the way that you walk, all of that is marketing. Then there's, marketing that is a little bit more traditional, whether it be social media marketing, whether it be merchandise, memorabilia, whatever the case may be. Understanding your target demographic and understanding the consumers around you is wildly important. And, you got to understand where you want to be and how you need to get there. And marketing is going to be the way to ultimately make that happen. So luckily for me, I have a degree in marketing and I understand it much more so than really most people in pro wrestling. I'd like to think so, at least. And that's what's helped me the most.
Because marketing, I feel like just doesn't get enough love in the wrestling world. I don't even know if it's something that's necessarily taught in a lot of wrestling schools.
No, it's not. I mean, listen, marketing isn't a headlock and a tackle. It's not something that a lot of the trainers know. They weren't taught marketing, but thankfully I was. And, I always knew it would be very important to have a degree prior to going into pro wrestling. It's a lot easier to do it in that stage rather than go into pro wrestling and then say, hey, well, maybe a degree might benefit me. It's not a backup plan per se. It's just, it's an enhancement to plan A. The degree was always an enhancement. I never looked at it as, well, this is a good follow-up or a good backup to pro wrestling. Because pro wrestling is going to work out. It is going to be, my career. And I never doubted that at all. Pro wrestling at its grassroots is marketing. That's all it is.
No, absolutely. How does MLW respond to that? I mean, do they pick your brain at all with some marketing techniques, or do they help you at all, or is it like some sort of working relationship? How does that work?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Court Bauer and myself and the team, the production team at MLW have a fantastic relationship, and we're always bouncing ideas off of each other's heads and, what could work and what won't work. And, do they ask me about specific marketing and branding? Well, of course they do. And, there's certain things that I ask them. And it's a great working relationship. That's why I feel like myself and MLW have, become synonymous and become quite the tandem. And it's really offered a lot of mental growth, which has been fantastic, teaching me more things about the wrestling business that maybe I didn't know prior to joining the roster. And then, of course, vice versa with the marketing stuff. For me, it's been, the perfect relationship.
So you're not only just a wrestler, but part of your role there might be slightly marketing as well.
There might be a slight interest in terms of my knowledge of marketing.
Have you helped some of the guys on the back as well?
I helped the Dynasty.
Of course. Well, I'm going to get into the Dynasty then. You guys work so well together. You have such an amazing dynamic, though, for lack of better words. Your promos, it seems like you guys have such a good time doing it together. Are those promos, are they written, or is that just something you guys come up with yourself?
You could not possibly write promo for the Dynasty. It's just not possible. When we get on in front of a camera, it's just really whatever comes to our heads and whatever we're feeling at that time. And without peeling the curtain back all too much, we do those in one take. We don't redo anything.
Why did I have a feeling?
It's what you see is what we felt, and that's what you get. And we're perpetual believers in, nope, not redoing it. There's no point, because it's never going to replicate it. It's never going to be as good as it was when it's raw and when it's organic. That's kind of my outlook on promos in general. I never really feel they're as good as the first one. when you're good at promos, I need to preface that statement. When you have the ability to speak, typically they are never as good as your first one. There are people out there who are not good at promos and probably shouldn't be in wrestling anyway, that have to do multiple takes. That is, and that is, to me, not really a promo. That at that point that becomes, a script, because you're probably having so many people say, well, why don't you say this, why don't you say that, and say it like this, and say it like that. That's not the way that the Dynasty really operates at all.
Well, I feel like I could talk to you all day about that part, but move along with the Dynasty. I'm part of a faction myself, and of course there's some road bumps when you first start out together. What did you guys find was your biggest road bump when you first started together?
Well, when me, Max, and Hammer first got together, it wasn't so much a road bump, but it was more of a, well, how are we going to make this work? Because we're three type A personalities, and we're three alpha males, and we're three guys who could shine as bright as really anybody. How are we possibly going to coexist?
Exactly.
That was kind of the initial feeling. And you'll see in some of the very, very, very early Dynasty promos that they're not what you see now. The initial ones. You really didn't even hear much from myself. It was more Max and with Hammer, and then not much from me. And then eventually it just came to the point where things just started clicking and different layers started getting added. I always consider the Dynasties like a cake. We're like a really well-baked cake. And we just keep adding layers on top of layers, and then putting frosting on the layers, and then adding another layer, and then we're just stacking this cake as high as we possibly can, and there's really no ending in sight. That's kind of the way that the Dynasty is.
Well, what type of cake would you say you guys are?
We're a very dynastic cake, probably gluten-free, and I'd like to think that we have like a macchiato frosting, per se.
Ooh.
That would be more my flavor. Who knows what kind of cake it is? That's for the consumers to decide. What kind of cake do you think that the Dynasty is? Go ahead and ask that.
Hashtag that too. Now, what do you feel makes someone dynamic?
Well, it's dynastic. And in order to be dynastic, you have to have several qualities that, well, I don't know if I really want to divulge all too much of what I look for when I go into recruitment mode. I want to point out that Gino Medina was 100% a recruitment from me. He was handpicked. I felt like he was the perfect person to start targeting the Latin demographic and start introducing some Spanish consumers more to the Dynasty, and he's done a fantastic job at doing that. Gino possesses all of the qualities that we look for, and he's improving on a daily basis in terms of, just living up to his Dynasty standards and what he could bring to the Dynasty. So he's been a fantastic acquisition. I don't always go into recruitment mode. I only do when I see opportunity. And there was a huge opportunity presenting itself at that time, which is why he was asked to join.
What is something you would say that you've learned from each member of the Dynasty?
Well, Maxwell, what can't you learn from Max? The guy is just as unapologetic and unadulterated as anybody I've ever met in my entire life. Hammer is as dedicated to his craft as I've ever seen. And I'd like to think that I've offered them, some knowledge and some wisdom that they might take from me. See, the cool thing about the three of us when we first started was that while we are very similar and while we all have a lot of similarities in terms of just the way that we go about things and our intellect, but we're also very different, and we do have some different perspectives, and we do have some different ideologies, and that's kind of where we started to blend and where we started to feed off of each other. If we were just three of the same, then you don't need three. You only need one. But if you have a little something different from all members of the Dynasty, then that's when it starts to really get interesting.
How long do you think it took you guys to figure out your groove?
Oh, man. I don't know. Maybe one show.
That's all it took.
Maybe after the first show. The first show might have been when it was kind of new to us and a little rocky, a little rough around the edges. But I think it was New York when we got together and just said, no, this is going to be great. Let's make it great. Would you say right from there it became great?
Would you say that's the moment you knew? It's like, wow, we definitely have something here.
Yeah, it was New York, April. I think it was WrestleMania week, maybe, when WrestleMania was in New York, and MLW ran the Melrose Ballroom in back-to-back nights. And, we main evented against the Hart Dynasty, and the Dynasty came out victorious. And right then and there, we knew we're onto something. We have something big here, and let's make it as big and as dynastic as we could. And that's what we did.
No, absolutely. I mean, you guys definitely elevated yourself to the top guys there, MLW for sure. And, you know, MJF, you know, I know his contract expired with you guys. What's it like now without him? Do you guys feeling that loss at all?
Well, I'm not going to say that we're feeling the loss. I mean, Maxwell obviously brought a intricate part of the Dynasty. I mean, he's one of the founding fathers for sure, and he'll always be synonymous with the Dynasty. And he'll always be in the Dynasty. He still is in the Dynasty. That'll never go away. And while he might not be present with us at the moment, no, I think we've done an excellent job recovering, you know, because the Dynasty is much more than just a group. We're a brand. We can't have the brand take a blunder in marketing or anything like that. It has to have just as strong as a presence in the marketplace as it did prior, if not stronger. So that's ultimately what my goal was for the Dynasty, and making sure that the wheels just keep moving and we keep progressing and going forward. So, no, I don't believe that we have any losses in terms of a branding perspective, although sentimentally, of course, it's difficult to not have Max with us.
I'm sure you still keep in touch with him, right?
Oh, without a doubt, of course.
I'm seeing in the news, MLW is signing more and more TV deals from abroad. You know, some of these nations, they may not have any idea what MLW is or who you guys are. You know, what's one thing that they should be on the lookout for MLW besides you guys? I mean, what's the main attraction there for them?
Well, I think the sales pitch for MLW is right in its name, which is MLW Fusion. And what we mean by fusion is that on any given week, there are so many different styles of wrestling that you're going to be able to watch and consume, whether it be dynastic wrestling, such as the Dynasty, whether it be somebody like Jacob Fatu, who is an in-your-face Samoan world champion, caliber wrestler, whether it be, you know, deathmatch wrestling like that Outlaw Mud Show idiot Mance Warner does, whether it's Lucha Libre wrestling, whether you have legends like LA Park or Conan on the show, whatever the case may be, that's what you're going to see. And it's not just your standard wrestling show. It's not just point A to point B. It's very unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen. The athletes that we have are some of the best athletes in the world. You know, guys like Tom Lawler come to mind when I think about that. And there's so much for a consumer to enjoy when it comes down to MLW.
No, you guys have a diverse amount of talent there on your roster. It's good for any type of wrestling fan at all. Do you feel like you guys don't necessarily get the credit you deserve, though?
Well, I never like to think that we don't get the credit, but yeah, I don't feel like enough people are watching MLW. I think more people will eventually. I do think that things are on the horizon that maybe, you know, might even be information that I'm not too privy on at the moment. But I think MLW is on the cusp of doing something huge, and the Dynasty is leading that ship right now. And it's exciting to be, you know, in the position that Hammerstone and Medina are in, and myself, because I think that MLW is really going to do something big, because while this virus is kind of halting the economy in its totality, wrestling, I think, is still in the midst of a boom period. It's going to take a little hit right now because people aren't able to put out product. You know, look at what WWE is doing. They're doing empty arena shows.
Right.
The industry in itself might take a little hit right now, but you can take 2 steps back and then take 3 forward. And I think that's going to happen with the industry in its totality. But MLW, I think, is going to do something huge, whether it be at the back end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021. Things are going to start coming off pretty big. But more people should be watching it now. And if they're not, just go on YouTube. Go ahead. You're quarantined. Go watch as much MLW Fusion as you can. Catch yourself up, because then you'll be hooked.
No, absolutely. Richard Holliday, thank you so much. I know you have to continue your press tour here today, so we'll wrap things up. Thank you again for stopping by, for having this conversation with us. Can't wait for MLW to come back. Can't wait to see you guys in action again. In the meantime, where can we find you on social media?
Consumers, please follow me at Most Marketable. That is at Most Marketable on Instagram and on Twitter. That's where you can find me. I'm on Pro Wrestling Tees. If you'd like to support, just search Richard Holliday, 2 L's in Holiday. I have 2 great designs up there. And in terms of social media, that'll wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you again, Richard Holliday. Can't wait to see you back in action. Guys, back to the studio to you.